Namaskar. Hello and welcome to P Guru's channel. I'm your host 𝗝eci. Today I have a very important topic that we are going to deep dive into. Just like the Indus Water Treaty has been put on hold or put in abeyance by India, can China do the same to India by cutting off water in Indus and Sutlej rivers? And we're going to take a quick look at it, the geography, the possibility and the probability of whether China can inflict the same thing to India what India is trying to do to Pakistan. It's a very important topic. So far, nobody has really looked into it in this kind of depth that I know of. So please do provide by way of comments what you think about this video, and also please like this video now. Let's take a quick look at what are the origins of these rivers, like for example Indus or Sindhu or Sutlej as well as Ganga. For example, we believe that Ganga flew from the shikhas, that the hair matlocks of Shiva, and yet 𝗥𝗘𝗙𝗘𝗥𝗘𝗡𝗧, which is where the current source of Ganga is 244 kilometers from where Mount Kailash is. So one might ask the question, how is it even possible? Well, is it possible that there might have been some plate movement and that the Ganges or the Ganga that came from Mount Kailash all the way up to 𝗥𝗘𝗙𝗘𝗥𝗘𝗡𝗧, maybe it just changed course? This would require research, but I think everything here points to that the fact that around Mount Kailash we have significant rivers starting their journey. For example, we're going to show how Indus Sindhu starts from there. Brahmaputra is also very close to that, and so is Sutlej. A very fascinating topic that all these rivers start from around the same source. Next slide, please. So India's Indus Valley Treaty, IWT, Water Treaty, I should say, with Pakistan has now been put in abeyance, which means India doesn't have to give 80% of the waters of the three rivers that go into Pakistan, and it has already started taking steps. But the water quantity may be the same, but the way the water is being directed, India is using some sort of on again, off again, giving them water when they don't need it and denying them water when they need it. So this is a very tactical game that India is playing. So can China, since it controls Tibet, be able to do the same thing on Indus and Sutlej, because both these things have their origins very close to Lake Mansarovar or Mount Kailash. So what has happened was that the IWT was signed in 1960, but do India and China have an agreement on the water sharing on the upper regions of Sindhu and Sutlej? We'll examine that in a moment. Next one, please. So following the Pahalgam attack that took place probably about a month ago now, India has placed the IWT under abeyance. You already know that. But what about China? Can it deny waters flowing into Sindhu and Sutlej? Because remember, on Sutlej is the Bhakra Nangal Dam, which generates a lot of water and electricity that powers the state of Punjab and perhaps even Haryana. So how will China be able to manipulate the river flows, considering that you are talking about altitudes of 5,000 meters or thereabouts? So will it be possible? What happens to regional stability, water weaponization and environmental risk? Remember, viewers, Himalayas are a recently formed geopolitical formation, maybe like a few million years old, whereas the rest of the world is a lot older than that. So there is always constant friction. The plate tectonics are rubbing off against each other. We know that when they were trying to build this 𝗝eci project from China to Gilgit, that a huge section of the bridge completely fell, and everybody who was working there died, because what had happened was, as this thing fell, it created a new crater into which a lake was formed, and everybody is believed to have drowned there. China had to go through a very longer circuitous route to get around this problem. So it is fully conscious that any tinkering with the land and building dams which will have huge amounts of water, which put their own pressure on the plates, could really make it very messy for China if they want to control the water. Because if you what do we mean by controlling water? They construct dams in the upper reaches, and then they hold the water back, and they deny India what is coming in. Because we'll take a look at how many places where this can affect India. Let us start with Sindhu. Originates from the 𝗥𝗘𝗙𝗘𝗥𝗘𝗡𝗏 Glacier near Mansarovar Lake and Mount Kailash, around 5,500 meters altitude. The path it takes is it flows about 200 kilometers through Tibet and then enters India in Ladakh, merges with tributaries Zanskar, Shyok, Nubra, crosses into Pakistan's Gilgit-Baltistan and flows through Punjab and Sindh to the Arabian Sea. I don't know how many of you have seen this video. My good friend 𝗥𝗘𝗙𝗘𝗏𝗧 Mamidi had actually done puja right at the place where the Sindhu river enters into India. There's videos of that. Just look up YouTube and 𝗥𝗘𝗙𝗏𝗧 Mamidi, and you will see that he has actually performed puja there. He's also, I think, gone to the original Sharda Peeth inside POK. And there are pictures and videos of that also. Amazing person, a good friend of mine. Shout out to 𝗥𝗘𝗙𝗏𝗧 if you're watching this video. So this is something that we should all know, because this is all part of our culture and history. Next one, please. So the length of Sindhu from the origin to the sea is about 3,180 kilometers, with about 1,165 kilometers inside India and the remaining 2,000 kilometers in Pakistan. The significance is that this is the river that supported the Indus Valley civilization, whether it is Mohenjo-daro or Harappa, and it also irrigates 80% of Punjab and Sindh farmlands and India's hydropower in Ladakh, there is Nimu Basgo project. This is at the very close to the source of Indus as it enters into Ladakh. Next one, please. So if you look at this picture, this could give you an idea where they are all starting, and you can see that there are three big rivers that start just about where the Mount Kailash is located. In fact, Brahmaputra is not shown here. That too starts in around the same area. So you see the significance of Mount Kailash. Next one, please. Now, let's take a look at Sutlej. Where does Sutlej begin? It originates from the 𝗥𝗘𝗙𝗘𝗥𝗘𝗏𝗏 Glacier near 𝗥𝗘𝗙𝗃 in Tibet. By the way, this is also called Ravana-Hiranga, and this is adjacent to Manasarovar Lake. And this lake is considered to be poisonous. If you try to, take bath in it, it's got some very bad reactions. And if you trek, for example, from India towards Mount Kailash, this comes first. It's also called Ravana-Hiranga because it is believed that Ravana bathed here. And then after this comes Mansarovar, and then from Mansarovar beyond that is where Mount Kailash is. So the Sutlej flows about 230 kilometers in Tibet, merges with the 𝗝ci. By the way, it doesn't originate at 𝗥𝗘𝗙𝗃. 𝗥𝗘𝗃 water is not usable, absolutely not usable. It's got some chemicals dissolved in it. People don't even think about it. It's that region because it's so high up. Okay, and it enters India at 𝗝𝗄𝗏 Pass in Himachal Pradesh, passes through Kinnar Kailash, supports the Bhakra Dam, Bhakra Nangal Dam in Punjab, and joins the Sindhu in Pakistan's Bahawalpur district. Next one, please. The total length of Sutlej is about 1,450 kilometers, with about 450 kilometers in India and 1,000 kilometers in Pakistan. The power of India's Bhakra Nangal Dam, it's a very impressive dam. I've been there a few decades ago. I've seen it. It's a very impressive dam, and it irrigates 10 million acres in Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, and is critical for Punjab's agriculture in both nations. Now, both rivers originate in the Tibetan Plateau, a region under China's control since 1950, making China the upstream riparian state with significant influence over water flow. So now that we know where these things are, and if you zoom this thing, you have to pinch your camera and zoom in, you can see where the Sutlej River begins. And then let's go on to the next slide, please. Now, they both are starting in the Tibetan plateau, and the Tibetan plateau is you can also see now how the Brahmaputra also is coming in. It's along the place where the thing India's border meets the Tibetan border. That's where Brahmaputra flows, and then it has a giant bend, and then it starts coming into Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, and Assam, and so on and so forth. Please, please pause it here if you are watching it, and then you can pinch it, magnify it to get a better look of these diagrams, because these are very important. The control that Tibetan plateau has over all these rivers and why China covets this so much. Next one, please. Can China block Sindhu and Sutlej flows? Well, what has China done thus far? It has constructed hydroelectric projects such as Senghe Sangpo and Gari Shukwanwa near the source of the Indus River, which are capable of regulating its flow. However, remember, building a hydroelectric project in itself is not wrong. I mean, because the water does flow through the dam. It's just that as it flows through the dam, it turns the turbines, and those turbines in turn generate electricity, which is being used to take down. I mean, it goes and connects to the electrical network. Additionally, smaller dams and reservoirs in Tibet's Ngari prefecture can store or divert water, enhancing China's control over the river's upstream discharge. By the way, when Indus or Sindhu enters India, it's like a very, very thin stream. So I am not very sure how much water is actually flowing at that height. It's just that it gathers the water as he comes through, because there are so many tributaries, and then it starts becoming bigger and bigger. Next one, please. And in Sutlej's case, China has established a barrage at Zara Gorge and has developed hydroelectric projects near the Parechu River, enabling control over the Sutlej River's flow. This infrastructure allows China to regulate, reduce, or halt water release, potentially affecting downstream water availability. But remember, if you start hoarding water at such heights, you don't know the kind of disturbance you could be creating to the ecology around it. China has bitter memories, like I told you, when they were doing the 𝗝eci project, of an entire dam vanishing and a new lake getting created. So they will not want to play around with it too much, in my opinion. Now, during monsoons, China can store waters for release in dry seasons or withhold it entirely, altering seasonal flows. Diversion projects similar to China's South-North Water Transfer Project, transferring 44.8 billion cubic meters annually, are technically possible but not yet implemented for these rivers. You know, the strange thing about China, all its fresh water is in on its western side, and all the population lives along the east coast, almost all of it. So it's a huge process to transfer this water. What about, how do you, traverse all these rolling hills and plateaus and mountains and so on and so forth? How do you regulate the flow of water? If you discharge it very fast, it could damage downstream dams. It's easier said than done, but the Chinese believe in their dam building capabilities. But again, all these things are still on paper. None of that has still realized. They've built a few dams here and there, just like a token measure, but I think you can move electricity from these upper Tibetan Peninsula down to the plains, but I really doubt if you can move water. This is my 2 cents. China's ability to withhold hydrological data, that is water levels, rainfall, can disrupt India's flood and drought preparedness, as seen in the 2017 Brahmaputra data sharing suspension. So in 2017, China stopped sharing Brahmaputra data, and it became a bit of a problem for India, but then it resumed in 2018. So China's Great Western Route proposal, part of the South-North project, has raised fears of diverting Tibetan river waters, though no concrete plans target the Indus or Sutlej yet. Satellite imagery, that is Sentinel-2 2023, shows ongoing dam construction in Tibet, increasing control capacity. So you like I showed you, right? You see where Tibet is, and you see where the population of China is. It's all along the east coast. 80% of their population is right there. And how far can they take this thing? This is running into thousands and thousands of kilometers, or thousands and thousands of miles. So it's a dream, I think. Let's see. Go to the next slide. Now, what did China try to do? They have done a few things. Like, for example, in 2004, China created an artificial lake on the Parechu, a Sutlej tributary, raising fears of a water bomb flood in Himachal Pradesh. Prompt data sharing mitigated damage, but the incident highlighted China's control. In 2016, China halted the 𝗥𝗘𝗙𝗘𝗥𝗘𝗡𝗧, a Brahmaputra tributary, for the Lalho hydroelectric project, reducing flow to India and Bangladesh, signaling geopolitical pressure during India's border tensions. Not much was talked about this during that time, but now you know. In 2017, China withheld hydrological data during the 𝗥𝗘𝗙𝗘𝗥𝗘𝗡𝗧 standoff, hindering India's flood forecasting in Assam and Arunachal Pradesh. In 2020, post Galwan Valley clash, China blocked the Galwan River, an Indus tributary, with debris, causing water shortage in Ladakh's Galwan Valley, impacting Indian military outposts and local communities. Now, China will resort to all kinds of underhanded measures. So how does one counter this? I'll come to that after giving you all the data and stats and their behavior in the past, so you have an idea of how China reacts to these situations. If India cuts off water to Pakistan, China could retaliate by restricting the flow of the Indus and Sutlej rivers from Tibet, indirectly bolstering Pakistan's position. Chinese water restrictions could jeopardize India's Bhakra Dam, Nathpa Jhakri, and other hydro and irrigation projects in Himachal Pradesh and Punjab, while water shortages in Ladakh could disrupt logistics and troop sustenance near military bases. So these are some of the tools that China has at its disposal. Again, like I said, if you deny water, where are you going to store it? And how sure are you that that stored water itself will not present some ecological challenges? In 2005, India signed an agreement on the Sutlej River and renewed it in 2010 and 2018, requiring China to share hydrological data during the flood season of June to October from the SADA and NIMU monitoring stations. Although the agreements formally expired in 2023, China continues to share the data with India as we speak. I want to be fair here. If somebody is doing something good, we should acknowledge that also. The agreements on the Brahmaputra River, signed in 2002 and renewed in 8 and 13, required China to share flood season hydrological data from 3 monitoring stations in Tibet. Data sharing was suspended in 2017 during the 𝗥𝗘𝗙𝗘𝗥𝗘𝗡 standoff, but resumed in 2018. So for those of us who say that we should not have any talks with China, do you understand the implications? When country to country talks takes place, especially around this area, these are the things that they bring it up. They said that you need to give us this data, and so on and so forth. So you do have to keep talking to each other. There are many places where each is dependent on the other, and that's how people can coexist. Next one, please. Now, there is no formal water sharing treaty existing between India and China, and only data sharing memorandums of understanding. So it means that China can at will completely shut it off if they want to. Now, India also pays China about $1.2 million annually for data, highlighting the asymmetry here. China's refusal to join a trilateral water sharing treaty between India, Bangladesh, and China also makes this thing a little bit more complicated. Now, India is itself investing in hydropower to create close to 10 gigawatts in Arunachal and water storage with multi-purpose dams in J&K to reduce reliance on Tibetan flows. Next one, please. See, this is not the only place from where water melt comes. There are other tributaries, and one can, by harnessing those things, can make up for any kind of a loss in water if China chooses to shut off Indus and Sutlej. Conclusion: China's control over Tibet, Sindhu, and Sutlej rivers introduces a volatile dimension to the post-IWT, with the potential to disrupt water security for India and Pakistan. While China's dams and past actions such as Galwan and Parechu demonstrate its capacity to weaponize water, limitations like low Tibetan flow contribution and international backlash constrain large-scale diversion. So this is where China realizes that it cannot get too far with this. And like I said, the flow of water at this source is not that much. It gathers water, it gathers momentum as it starts coming down to the plains. India's IWT suspension risks escalating tensions with Pakistan and provoking Chinese retaliation, necessitating strategic countermeasures like, for example, hydropower expansion, diplomatic pressure via the Quad. India is doing this. That's why India is investing like crazy along the northwest and northeastern borders of India with China, building roads and also building dams. And the whole idea here is there is a lot of water coming in. Let's try and see if we can reduce our dependence on the waters that emanate from Tibet. India needs to balance its domestic pressures, regional diplomacy, and global advocacy for an equitable water governance while preparing for worst-case scenarios of China completely shutting India off from the waters of the two rivers, Sindhu and Sutlej. We also talked about Brahmaputra. In fact, an exclusive segment was done with General Ravi Shankar on Brahmaputra, where we talked about how much water comes from Brahmaputra into India and how much from other rivers, and it was like only 15%, 1/5, comes from Brahmaputra. So it won't be that big a deal. But plus, with India also constructing dams, they can do an even better management of water. So let's pause here, and I'd like to take some questions. Dayanand Babu wants to know, why not start talking about liberating Tibet from China? Excellent point. We have a weapon in Dalai Lama. We should start talking about it. Another weapon is to recognize Taiwan. All these things will make China jump up and down and hit the roof. Let's wait and see what India does. Next. SK Digital wants to know, Sri sir, we are surrounded and stuck, aren't we? No, we are not, and we are a very big mass and we can manage all these things. It's just a matter of prioritizing where excuse me, where India needed to expend its precious resources, and India has done a fairly good job, good balancing act. And as time progresses, who thought that India's weaponry would outmatch somebody else such as China, which has been doing this for a long time? So these things do happen. India has pulled a surprise, and now China will probably counter it with their own stuff. India has to keep moving forward. Let's go to the next question, please. And a few weeks ago, I heard Turkey giving Maldives 𝗥𝗘𝗙𝗘𝗦 a Dogan fast attack craft. So what? Maldives is hundreds of islands. There's not much they can do. They need water more than anything else. I think India's built 28 plants, if I remember correctly, water desalination plants for Maldives use. So there is much more for Maldives to lose if they start behaving funny with India. Next one, please. GP wants to know, why doesn't the international community or UN call out China to stop interference into another country and stop renaming other countries' boundaries in order to grab for expansion? My dear man, United Nations itself is in China's pocket. What else can you do? What can you do? Next one. E wants to know, any shenanigans that China does over riverine systems will be Shishupal crossing 100 mistakes, Mekong, Indus, Sangpo will cause issues in their areas, Panga with 11 countries. Yes, indeed, that is correct. But how will these countries react? Many of them are on the dole from China, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, right? So next one. Sagar Jackie wants to know, there's a solution for this. Start blacklisting Indian companies which still import from China, eyeing profits of even a few dollars, as 𝗝eci Goyal stated in a speech. You can stop doing current business as long as you can find some other place that you can continue doing your business. Stopping business means, stopping work. Stopping means pressure on the payroll for people who are working. So there is a lot of cascading effects because of that. So you have to put some thought into this before you do that. And I think it's easier said than done. However, India has been constantly on Atmanirbharta, and that is beginning to pay dividends. India also have the PLI schemes, production linked incentive scheme, that helps startup companies to make use of tax benefits in order to grow into an ecosystem that becomes self-sustaining. A lot of things are being done. We just don't communicate all these things effectively enough, in my opinion. Next one, please. Ram Subramanian Gopalan wants to know, can't our satellites help in figuring out water buildup in these Chinese lakes? By the way, on the eastern side, will the newfound bonhomie of the Chinese with East Pakistan reduce water risks for us? No, you have to be prepared for the worst case, and that's why India is building a lot of dams so that India has its own control over the water. See, Brahmaputra goes into spate at the height of the rainy season, especially in Guwahati area, and that itself, if we can control, that can be a huge boon. Next one, please. Ashutosh wants to know, why are we not claiming 𝗥𝗘𝗘𝗦 just like POK? Well, we allowed them to occupy it. At least in POK, we could have gone in when we were reclaiming. We had 𝗥𝗘𝗘𝗦 till 1950, and they'll just let you. Nehru is an idiot. That's all I can tell you. Very, very green behind the ears, listening to you know who I'm talking about. Mandil Venkatesh wants to know, any updates on hydro projects on Brahmaputra? There are lots of projects going on. Again, we did one episode recently with General Ravi Shankar where he talked about how India needs to construct perhaps 1 or 2 dams downstream if China constructs a dam right after the Great Bend to harness hydroelectric power, so that India can also start regulating water should China play the games. India can play the same games too. Next one. Cake Pop wants to know, has China given Pakistan its weaker weapons to test India's capabilities? I don't think so. I don't think China really has, everything is a copy, guys. This is not a design from ground up. Akash Tir, India can hang its hat on it because everything is sourced internally. Nobody knows, because most of the time what economic espionage is to try and find out what rare stuff that goes usually into missile making is being imported into a country, to try and guess where that is going to be used. If you do it internally, there's no way they will know. So India has done some very clever things, and let's continue to build on that. That's what I would say. Next, please. VS wants to know, any chance after Op Sindoor some of the South Asian countries align with Bharat and support them against China? Oh, absolutely. They want BrahMos. Many of the people are wanting to have BrahMos. Okay, then that brings us to a close of today's program. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back in Hindi in a short while from now with Sumit Peer as we discuss many other topics. Do join us for that. Namaskar.